All right, kiddos, we are continuing with Unit 8. We started Unit 8 last week where we were talking about the impacts on Earth's surface, and we were specifically looking at slow changes, thinking about weathering, erosion, and deposition. So this week we're going to continue. We're still talking about how Earth's surface is affected and how it's changed over time, but now we're looking more at fast changes, things that can happen in a matter of seconds or even minutes, and we call these catastrophic events. A few connections that I want you to keep in the back of your head. First off, your objective. The student is expected to predict and describe how catastrophic events such as floods, hurricanes, or tornadoes impact the ecosystem. So we're going to look at those three and then a few more. Um, you are also asked to think about how catastrophic events directly affect the processes of weathering, erosion, and deposition, and how those catastrophic events could affect the ecosystem either positively or negatively. Okay, so let's get into our vocabulary. A few new words this week. So a catastrophic event, like a catastrophe, is usually on a large scale and causes damage to the ecosystem. It can be very deadly and damaging. Some things that are categorized as catastrophic events: extreme weather such as floods, hurricanes, or tornadoes. And I'm sure you can probably think of a few more on your own, and they are classified by the intensity of their impact on the ecosystem. So even though, when we're talking about hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes and things like that, we have learned to rate them and measure them on how they are impacting the ecosystem. Don't forget what an ecosystem is. An ecosystem is basically everything living and non-living in an area that are interacting and affecting life in that particular ecosystem. So you can see here, these are two different ecosystems after some sort of catastrophic event. So if you look here, if you're looking for your evidence, we kind of look like we're on a beach or a coastal region. So what do you think happened here? What could have caused this devastation? And looking at this one, if you just looked at the picture, you probably have a good idea. Probably more likely a tornado or something came through this area and caused this destruction. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. Is a flood. A flood is basically when a body of water rises over where it's supposed to be. Okay, it could be a river coming up over its banks. It could be the water on the coast, like if you're on a beach or something where the water comes up like a tsunami. That's considered a type of flood. Here in Texas, what you guys are probably most associated with are flash floods. And we call them a flash flood because they come in a very fast time. And it's typically because we get a lot of rain and our ground can't saturate it quick enough. So it becomes a flash flood where, it recedes as quick as it comes. Some things, and we're going to talk about causes and effects. So the things that typically cause a flood would be excessive rain, a surge, like I'm talking about if you were on a beach or something where the water would have come up on the land. So that would be what we call a surge, or even something as like a dam. Like if you were to live near a dam and the dam were to break or to bust and all that water would have come through, that's a flood too. And effects that floods have, and I just put a few of the main ones on here. So loss of life, obviously. What we're going to be looking at, most of these cause some sort of death and destruction. Damage to buildings and structures, bridges, highways. Think about even your potholes. Believe it or not, that's usually a direct relation to the flooding or the water washing over the road. Sewer systems, when we have a surge of water come up onto where we live in our residential areas, we get contaminated sewers, or your waters get contaminated. Hurricanes. Basically, I'm sure you're probably familiar with this. A hurricane is just a tropical weather system that forms over the water and it moves onto the land. So it says here it's an extreme low pressure air mass with heavy rains and winds of at least 119 kilometers an hour. So you'll see tomorrow, if you choose to do the ed puzzle that I'm going to share with you, you'll see how we use the scale to measure hurricanes based on the different wind intensities. But yes, a hurricane is known for its extreme weather, mainly its wind and the surge of water. Those are the two big ones. Okay, things that cause a hurricane is they form over the ocean, so they're going to be typically in where it's tropical. When the warm, moist air over the water rises, it's replaced by the cooler air, and then the cooler air will then warm and starts all over again. If there's enough warm water, the cycle continues, and then there's a storm that will form. Like this right here showing you how the hurricane forms. We call this the eye in the middle. Yeah. Effects, again, we have flooding, strong winds, damage to coastline and structures, death and destruction. Tornadoes. Here's a good picture of what a tornado could possibly look like. But basically, it's just a violently rotating column of air. It comes from a thunderstorm. And tornadoes, the difference between a tornado and a hurricane is the storm that forms over the water. Tornadoes, typically, they're formed on the land. They do have excessive wind speeds as well. And actually, it's a misconception. A lot of kids typically think that hurricanes are stronger than tornadoes, and that's not true. Tornadoes typically have higher wind speeds than hurricanes. So, fun fact for you. Okay. What causes a tornado? Okay, so you don't know this. Tornadoes form when warm, humid air collides with the cold. So, again, very similar to a hurricane. The dense cold air is pushed over the warm air, usually producing thunderstorms. The warm air rises to the colder air, causing that updraft. Effects, massive wind damage. Again, lots of rain too. But the wind would be the main one here that's causing the death and destruction. It destroys structures, trees, fields, crops. If you're out in the wild thinking about the loss of habitat, if you're a forest animal and the trees got wiped out, yeah, you just lost your home, didn't you? Okay, here's another one, landslides. If you don't know what a landslide is or how it works, basically a landslide is when a piece of the earth shifts and falls. So it could be like a side of a cliff where it gives way and it falls. Again, this keep it in mind in the back of your head when you're thinking about the weathering and the erosion and the deposition. And last week when we were talking about those three processes, I mentioned that it's kind of the what goes up must come down effect. And so, if you were thinking about the side of a cliff, if it were to give way and it were to fall, all that dirt and rocks, or whatever, they're going to fall. They're going to, erode. But eventually, they're going to come to rest at a new spot. And that's where a lot of the damage takes place, especially if you happen to be living at the bottom of that cliff, or, and it were to give way. So things that cause landslides, gravity is the big one, because as the earth starts to shift and crack and weather, gravity will take hold and pull on it. And that's what causes it to fall. Other things. Let's see. If you get a heavy rainfall that's in a particular area and the land becomes too saturated and too heavy, it'll cause it to fall. Earthquakes. Okay, if you know what an earthquake is, when the ground shakes, that causes landslides and mudslides. Volcanic eruptions. These are all catastrophic events, but with the volcano typically comes shaking and violent shaking, which causes landslides. So these catastrophic events that we're talking about don't necessarily happen solo. They do, one can cause something else to happen. So double devastation in that. So some effects of a landslide is obviously, besides the cost of repairing, the loss of what takes place, we have death in animals. Okay, so talking about, excuse me, again, if you were at the bottom of that landslide, you could lose habitat, animals, upsetting the ecosystem, that biodiversity in the area. All right. Oh, here's some good pictures I found that show you kind of what the landslide could look like or how it could affect a particular area. This is just, like picture if you were in this area, living here. Yeah, look, they just lost their road, right? This is lots of death and destruction here. You can see that this is more of a mudslide because it looks really wet. So this was probably something that had something, that was associated with that saturation of the ground that I would just refer to with the heavy rains and flooding. All right, another catastrophic event that I want to introduce to you is a volcanic eruption. So basically, if you don't know what causes a volcano, it's a buildup of pressure inside the earth. And then as the plates of the earth start to move, it forces that melted rock to come to the surface. And typically you have an explosion of poisonous gases and lava flow and rocks and debris. So all that would come shooting out of the crevice of the earth. Effects of volcanoes if you don't already know this, they could have long-term effects such as climate, because of the heat and the ash. Okay, let me back this up. The main thing that volcanoes are known for are their ash clouds. So typically, people think of the climate becoming warmer because of the volcano, but actually, it's the opposite. You have these huge ash clouds that block out the sun for periods of time. So typically, what happens near a huge volcanic eruption is that the climate would get cooler. Of course, the lava flow, killing and burning everything in its path. Um, Causing fires, earthquake, again, because of the shaking of the ground due to the pressure. So another fun fact for you, though, that, all these are negative, all these are horrible things that happen from a volcano. A good thing that happens from a volcanic eruption is that lava that comes out. When it cools off, you have new rock. So just like when we were talking about succession in the previous lesson, we learned about primary and secondary succession. So with a volcanic eruption, this would be where primary succession would take place. Over time, the rock would be broken down into soil and then allowing plants to move in and animals to move into the area. Okay, wildfire fires, excuse me. These are man-made and natural, so it just depends on what happens here, but it could be something like lightning causes the fire, or it could be just carelessness of humans, what we do. The impacts, most people think of a fire just being devastating, just being bad, of course, burning everything and killing everything in its path. uh, but just like a volcano, these two can also have positive impacts. Again, thinking about succession, uh, a wildfire, come through and burn out a particular ecosystem and destroy the ecosystem. This would be more of the secondary succession because you already have the soil there. It would just allow the plants to come back and grow even more vibrant and healthy, and bring in more diversity over time. One more catastrophic event, earthquakes. So if you don't know what an earthquake is, basically it's just the violent shifting of the Earth's plates. Earthquakes are caused when rocks underground shake and break along what we call those fault lines. And it releases that energy causing the ground to shake. So there's a good before and after picture here on the slide of an area before the earthquake and after. So you can see, again, lots of destruction there. Okay, devastating. Besides the shaking of the earth and the destruction of structures, and loss of life, think about the contamination of your waters due to all of this debris that's left after the earthquake. So again, keeping in mind that these catastrophic events don't just happen solo. One typically leads to another catastrophic event. um, Okay. So just keeping this in mind, think of how many more you can come up with on your own, because there's many other natural catastrophic events that I didn't think about or I didn't put into this slide. There are many man-made things that we're doing to destroy the earth. I'm sure you can probably come up with a huge list on your own. But I want to share with you that starting this week, we're going to do the lessons, the work a little bit different. I've noticed that some of you are having issues getting ed puzzles to work, while some of you are having issues with getting STEM scopes to work. So, in the last few weeks of school, you will be doing, or I will be posting both. Okay, I'm going to make my teacher video just to introduce the content so you can hear the words and what they mean, and I can show you pictures where you can make connections with the content. And then you can choose either the ed puzzle, or you can watch another video and listen and answer a few questions to show me that you understood. Or if you would rather log into STEM Scopes and do a lesson that I post on STEM Scopes, that works just fine. You only have to do one. Okay. If you choose to do both, I will simply take the higher grade. You don't have to. I also want you to know that on the Legends of Learning, if you want to do some practice before you do your grade, because my video may not be enough for you. You may watch my video and you still be going, I don't get it. I need some more information. So you always have your Legends of Learning. If you want to log on there, I've made a couple of playlists this week. Not forgetting, your code for Legends of Learning is Mahia M1 if you're in my class. And if you're in Miss Lavelle's class, Miss Lavelle will have to give you that code because I'm not sure where her code is. But so you can do practice through Legends of Learning, and you know what? YouTube. Just go get on the internet and do your own research. There's bukus of information out there on this content. So my video is not the do all end all. Please feel free to look up and watch other videos. You can get on do some research and find an interactive website that you may enjoy and good practice. And then your activity that you do, either the Ed Puzzle or the STEM Scopes, that is your grade for the week. So choose wisely, pay attention, do your work, and if you have questions, make sure that you're visiting Miss Lavelle during the morning hour. Remember her, she's doing hours from 11 to 12, while I'll do afternoon hours from 4 to 5. And you can click on the classroom link that's posted in your stream if you need help. All right, see you soon.